I'd like to thank Tundra Books for sponsoring today's video. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Haley with Haley Stitches, and today I'm teaching you how to make a super sweet patchwork quilt. This quilt is based on the brand new book, The Little Ghost Quilt's Winter Surprise. All you need to make this quilt is 2 charm packs or a bunch of fabric scraps from your stash. So grab your fabric and let's get started. These are the supplies we'll need for today's project. The first thing is, of course, the brand new The Little Ghost Quilt's Winter Surprise book. I'm going to be using 2 identical charm packs, some background fabric for the face, a cutting mat. You'll also need a ruler, a rotary cutter, some sort of marking utensil, pins, and matching thread. The free pattern and these supplies will be linked below. My first little ghost quilt is right here and immediately got claimed by my 3-year-old, so I'm giving this version a nice little winter refresh. I am going to be using these 2 really adorable sewing themed charm packs, and I'm going to lay them out in an 8x10 grid, just making sure the color distribution is even. And while I do that, I wanted to talk about the sponsor of today's video. Today's quilt tutorial is extra special because it's inspired by The Little Ghost Quilt's Winter Surprise by Real Nason and illustrated by Byron Eggenschweiler. It's the sequel to The Little Ghost Who Was a Quilt, and it's just as sweet, cozy, and full of heart. I read it with my 3-year-old the other night, and she absolutely loved pointing out all of the sparkly, twinkly lights and finding the little ghost quilt on each page. It's such a fun holiday story about friendship, kindness, and sharing the magic of the season. While I'm making my free ghost quilt pattern today, I'm choosing some frosty blues and some nice, cuddly, cozy backing fabric just to give this quilt a nice winter refresh. And here's an idea I love. Make the quilt, pair it with the book, and gift them together. It'll make any child's holiday so special, and you can create a new family tradition by reading the book together under your handmade quilt. The Little Ghost Quilt's Winter Surprise is available now, and I know you'll love it just as much as my daughter and me. Here I have all of my squares laid out on my design wall, and wherever you want to put the face, if you're opting to do the pieced face, then you'll want to have duplicates of those squares. So I am putting the face right in the center, and you can see in these 4 I have duplicate prints. So I am keeping those together so that I can piece the eye and mouth blocks. Here I pulled down the squares I'm going to be using for the eye and mouth blocks, and then my background fabric is just this really dark navy that I'll be using for the dark parts of the eye and the mouth. So it's important to keep everything together while you're cutting here, but you can cut everything according to the instructions in the free pattern. So here are all of my pieces all cut, and I'm going to show you how to assemble the eye piece and the mouth piece so that you can do it on your own. So here are all of the left eye pieces, and both eyes are assembled the exact same way. The first thing I'm going to do is draw a diagonal line on the back of these 4 small pieces. And when we're piecing these eye and mouth blocks, all we're doing is what's called a snowball method. So the first thing you'll do is draw a diagonal, and then you'll line your pieces up on your fabric, making sure that diagonal line is not pointed towards the corner. And you'll do that for each corner, and then we will sew along that marked line. After you've sewn the 4 squares onto that background eye piece, you'll trim off the little triangles on the corners. So we're trimming a 1/4 inch away from that sewn line. And then we're going to press all of the seams away from the center so that it opens up into a nice square shape. And if you don't want to fuss around with the piecing of the eyes and the mouth, you can just do this a plain patchwork quilt, or I'm going to link an applique pattern below so you can use that also if you're interested. After everything is pressed, we're going to sew on this strip, and then we're going to trim it down to a 5-inch square. So all of your squares in this pattern will be 5 inches, whether you're working from a charm pack or your fabric stash. I'm going to be using all 84 squares from the charm pack, but you can easily add more squares if you want to make this quilt bigger, and you can also make your squares larger to help you make it bigger as well. And this is the left eye, and we're going to repeat that process to make the right eye. And now we're going to move on to the mouth blocks. So the mouth blocks are actually pieced two separate ways. So this is the left side of the mouth. So we're going to draw a diagonal on those small squares and do the snowball block method here on the left side of that left mouth piece. And then we're going to trim and press just like we did with the eye pieces. Then we're going to sew these two pieces together and then sew these two strips together and trim the final piece block to 5 inches square. And you can see the right side of the mouth is just a reflection of the left side. So now we're going to place all of our mouth pieces back onto our quilt. And here it is all together, and what we're going to do is sew this together column by column and then row by row. And I'm going to be using a method called the net piecing method. So here I did 2 halves, just sewing all of the columns together. And I did 2 halves because it made it a little bit less bulky. So all I'm doing when I'm sewing is I'm sewing 2 columns together, and then I'm going to add 1 more column and 1 more column, and then it makes it really easy to make sure all your pieces stay in the right place because they're all kind of connected in this web. So I'm going to sew that final seam here. And by sewing this way, I was able to make all of these rows super quickly. And I just paid extra attention to that mouthpiece to make sure that everything was lined up. And then the last thing I'm going to do is press in opposite directions before I piece all of these rows together, just to make sure everything nests nicely and we end up with a great patchwork style. This is what the final pieced quilt top looks like, and you can see that mouth is in the center, but you can place it anywhere you want to in this quilt. I didn't have a chance to finish it yet because I just couldn't decide on the backing. I have 2 flannel options, one's plain and one is checkered, and then I also got some blue minky fabric. I've never worked with it before, so if you have any tips, let me know. But let me know which one you would choose for the backing fabric. And here are my 2 little ghost quilts side by side. These are seriously the cutest, and I can definitely vouch that they are a big hit with my daughter. I can't stress that enough. And here is a look at the final quilt top. So you can grab that free pattern using the link in the description below, and make sure to pick up your very own copy of the Little Ghost Quilts Winter Surprise, available now.